Shookers!
Damn it. I listened to one before and I knew that was happening and I forgot.
No, you were great. Thanks for joining us. I'm James.
I'm Neil.
This is Clare Hennessy. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Welcome to Shookers. Welcome to our podcast. Thank you for enjoying the pumpkin spice cake coffee that we've all been having.
Coffee.
It's
good.
Yeah.
I haven't had one before and it is delicious.
Wonderful.
Okay, if Nespresso could sponsor our podcast, that would be fantastic because we're fitting our audience.
Yum.
Audience.
Delicious.
And you're a playwright and musician.
Yes.
Yes. And you've got a show coming up called Tongue Tied.
Yes.
Wonderful.
KXT.
At KXT, wonderful. Still the old venue or the new venue now?
We have just been confirmed for the old venue.
Great.
Oh, that's
great.
Yes.
going. I thought they moved on to the new venue.
Yeah. But no, still.
Yes. They're heading into the new venue at some point, I think, in the next few months.
Sure.
But it's, I think, one of those things where, like, I don't know how you'd move a big theatre. That would be so hard.
Yeah.
Moving, just, getting permits and creating a space. So they've been really great. They've just been like, look, we'll help you wherever you end up. We'll make sure you get there.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
I mean,
good.
like, we want to give them as much time as possible, right? As long as they're allowed to stay at King's Cross Hotel, right? So in the meantime,
that's exactly in the meantime. I mean, and especially because we've seen so many theatres and so many live performance venues just go like completely down the toilet in the last few years coming out of COVID.
What has recently one gone down?
Well, the old 505.
Old 505,
was in
yeah.
Redfern, and I do believe that it's maybe coming back.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know under what circumstances and by who. But I know that the Lansdowne I don't know enough about it.
Lansdowne upstairs?
Something like that, yeah.
That's just you mean the pub upstairs?
They had a live music venue
Yeah, upstairs,
in there.
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I used to work there.
Pardon?
I used to work there.
Did you? Really? So you would have, I realize saying this now, I don't have much intel about any of this venue stuff, but
great.
you probably do have intel about it.
No, like, I don't know. I didn't know they had I know it's a live venue.
Yeah,
they do
right.
live music and little rock bands come through there and they have a good show. But I didn't know there was like a theatre.
Not a theatre venue,
space
live music. But I think it's great that like people, those venues are still kind of finding a way to survive given everything that's happened in the last few years.
I mean,
it's been nuts.
When essentially your product is something that you just can't deliver to people's homes and requires people to gather in large groups together.
Yeah.
It's really hard coming back from COVID.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
But it's been such an exciting, I don't know if you both have had the sense of that in the last few months, but it just feels so exciting. Like suddenly everything is coming back in a huge way. I mean, like, have you noticed that? What's that been like from your perspective?
Well, I've seen the most amount of theatre I've ever seen in 1 year this year. Yeah.
So since January this year?
Yeah, January this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Me
Like
too.
this year has just been like, I've seen so many shows.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. And I keep on missing out on great shows.
It feels like that. It totally feels like that. I have had exactly the same thing. I just can't possibly get to everything that's happened. But really, we wrote this show, Tongue Tied, before COVID and we'd been programmed to go on in 2020.
Oh, wow.
And then it was a COVID casualty, like many of the shows this year have been, where they've been push. And we were so grateful that KXT kept us and said, no, don't worry, we're going to just postpone it until we've been up and running. And then second year rolls around, the postponing happens again. But I've been sitting on this show since 2017.
Wow.
So it's been in the pipeline for a long time. So it feels like kind of surreal to be sitting at like staring down the barrel of it's actually happening in like 3 weeks time. Do you know what I mean? There's a part of my body's like, no, it's not going to happen, because it's just constantly felt like it's just been this moving target. So it's really, really great. that it's happening finally.
It's really, I tell you what is surreal is when COVID was sort of going through just before the shutdown, and you would be watching a show and then literally the next day they shut it down.
Literally.
It's like unheard of, never been heard of. Like everything's been shut down.
So bizarre.
50 people in the audience. Like I was working in the Opera House at the time.
Were you? Yeah.
And it went from having I forget how much people can have in the venue, but like to having 200 people in the venue. Oh, that's nothing. Like,
that's so
and
weird, isn't it?
yeah, it is weird. Like
So
and just
weird.
shut down next day. Like what is going on?
Right,
Like,
and don't you feel like too? There's been this bit of a weird bit of amnesia about just how weird that was.
yeah.
I know we're all kind of trying to forget about it, maybe, or just move on. But like, that was so weird. That was so weird. 2 years ago, those moments of I was in a dress rehearsal. And it was my birthday. That's how I remembered when we went into lockdown, because it was my birthday. And we were in dress rehearsals for something. And we were all sort of sitting there going like, what are we going to do? Like, are we even going to open this show? And we didn't. We didn't open it.
Wow.
But it's bizarre. So bizarre.
but what did you do? But when you were in like lockdown, I guess, were you working on the show, and how did you keep yourself busy?
I found it so hard to be creative during lockdown, and I felt like it was really easy to compare yourself to other people because we were all sort of in that similar situation. And some people seem to really thrive in that, which is amazing and so good for them. But I didn't find that at all. I found like I was really like dry, barren as a desert creatively during that time. But I don't know. How did you feel like it made creativity easier or harder?
It did for me.
Yeah,
That's great. That's so good. Go you.
Yeah. I loved being able to write.
That's great.
And it was great that other people were bored, because when I finished writing, I could contact them and go, "Hey, do you want to do a Zoom reading of my play?"
Yes, that's
And
so
they're like,
good.
I've got what day is that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well,
check.
Wow.
it doesn't really matter because we're all in lockdown. They're like, I guess I could probably swing that. It was great. So
That's so good. Yeah, you've got captive
captive actors.
collaborators.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, for sure. So that's very smart that you use that as that time. I couldn't get there, but coming out, I've found the opposite. I've just been like on overdrive the last sort of 12 months creatively, which has been so cool.
wonderful.
Really exciting.
I picked up at that time I picked up a cleaning job. Just down the road and at one of the government departments, and I would just get there at 8 o'clock in the morning and I'll just work because no one's actually in the building.
Yes.
Right? Sorry, there were a few because it's a science sort of department, and so there's a few scientists there and everything, and I'll do some cleaning, whatever, basically the wiping, and I'll listen to Larry Moss all day, and then I would listen to like different plays in my ears.
I love
and
that.
then I would go home, and if I come up with an idea, just like him, I'll just go and write something.
Oh, I love that.
And I realized that at that point I realized that I liked being alone, like
Yes.
in a quiet space, and it was great. But like for example, for my partner, like, she struggled because she likes to be out about and
getting that stimulation.
But
yes,
which is odd because it didn't matter for me. I was just like, yeah, whatever. So we ended up doing a little film on our phones. We used 4 different phones, one for sound, 2 for sound, one for camera, and we use it and then we put it together.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so we were very lucky. Like we lived with 2 other people at the time, just down the road. But still, it was a struggle. You know, I'm not saying everyone should be like us, but like it is what it is. Yeah.
I think it just made me think too, like, and I don't know if you both relate to this as well, but I think we get so much pressure as creative people to constantly have a certain level of output or a certain level of like investment time-wise into your craft or whatever it is that you do. And I felt a lot of anxiety during lockdown about not being really, inverted commas, productive. But I think it was weirdly reassuring coming out the other side, sort of acknowledging like it just is a cycle. It comes. It's okay to have those periods of rest and those periods where you're really just percolating things in the background. Like I think I was probably on some level digesting things creatively. I digested a lot of content in that time.
Yeah, you did.
But now I'm kind of coming out the other side, and that's been kind of reassuring. So as you say, for some people it's great that just aligned with a really fertile kind of time.
Yeah. But there were times in our world where there were so-called peace times or during the Renaissance or whatnot, like where they had no wars, no nothing, and they had time to do art and creative and progress in society, you know?
Yeah.
And like I'm sure there was. I think one thing that we do have as creatives that most people don't is that we can be creative whether it's in a pandemic or whatever it is. We can constantly do something, you know. And even if it takes, I mean, one of the things that James actually taught me recently is about not rushing things.
Yeah.
You know, like sometimes you need to. Well, would you be doing that if you're like poor? Yeah. Would you do that if you're single or in deathbed or sick or whatever?
Yeah.
Yes, I would be. You just continue to keep doing that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people did continue to do that, which is great, you know.
Totally.
But so guys, let's just get off the Zoom stuff now. Let's get all the Zoom readings.
Oh my god,
it's still going.
They are. We had a rehearsal the other day. We're rehearsing Tongue Tied at the moment, and it's great that we're able to do it on Zoom. It's not what our preference would be. And it's so good that it's an option, but we all sort of had that collective moment when someone's connection was dropping out, and then like 10 seconds delay before you hear them go like, fuck, shit. Like, out of frustration, we're all like, oh yeah, we forgot about this. Like, this is really, really hard. So testament to all of us for kind of making that happen and making it work.
Yeah.
Well, tell us more about Tongue Tied.
Well, actually, it's funny you say that don't rush things, because this play has been the epitome of just don't rush this, right? Which is great, because as a writer, I think, especially as an early career writer, I've been writing or at least having my work produced and performed for maybe under 10 years, but around 7 years now. And I was used to having this output after graduating from university of, you know, writing a show in a few months, performing that show that same year, and then moving on to the next thing, trying to get a body of work together. And that was a really amazing time of just getting to experiment. But it felt really strange then to have a play that I didn't just sort of get that same cycle happening. It's taken years for this thing to happen, and the world has changed so much since this play was first written. So to give you context sort of about what the world is like of the play, it's about this workplace that has had this sexual assault happen. And it's not about that actual moment. It was very important to me it wasn't about that. It's not a play about that specific event. It's more about the aftermath of that event and how it kind of plays out. And I wrote it in 2017. It was initially commissioned by Redline Productions, who were
fantastic,
to be just to be like a small, like one act thing, a very small thing, and it was a two-hander at that stage. And we wrote it in July, and then a few months later, Me Too happens.
Wow!
Right. So when I thought of the idea, it was very much just responding to the collective unconscious and frustration of many people, but there still wasn't a language around talking about this kind of thing for a few months, so it sort of predated that. But now I think a lot of people, when they hear about it, they kind of assume, oh, it's a Me Too, it's a post-Me Too play, it's, you know, and it is. And because I've had time to develop it since all of that has happened, it's in a way responded to Me Too and all of those things. But I try to resist feeling like that's what it is.
That's what it is, yeah, but it's not. But it's a separate thing, right? Like
Yeah, it's not ostensibly about that, but at the same time, I think what's happened in Australia since that sort of the collective zeitgeist becoming aware of this as an issue, what happened in America was broadcast to us here in a huge way. We heard all of these kind of triumphant stories about people being dethroned rightfully, and we haven't had that same thing happen here. It's still like endemic here across so many institutions and workplaces, and in a way the play is a response to that as well. Like we had the same anger here. I don't know that we've seen the same systemic change happen here. So it's sort of about all of that. It's deliberately trying not to give any answers to that because I don't think there are any answers. I really believe that like it's really tempting to want to go see shows that give you kind of a position and say, okay, as an audience, we're all kind of left-leaning and very progressive, and so we're going to reflect back those values to you, and so we can sit in the audience and go, oh, yes, we all agree with this thing, we think this thing. Which has a place sometimes to have that didactic sort of storytelling, but it's been really interesting to write a play that kind of refuses to do that because I don't think that's a true mirror for what's actually happening. I think it's too complicated to give it a kind of answer. There isn't really an answer yet, I don't think.
That's really fascinating that you bring up that, yeah, there are totally different types of storytelling that we have, especially in our plays.
Yes.
And yeah, I wonder, are you able to talk a bit more about kind of what you want the audience to experience or walk away with from seeing Tongue-Tied?
Well, from Tongue-Tied in particular, I think it's really important to me that what I've realised in the process of having readings and developing this work, the thing that feels the most fulfilling for me is when someone comes up to me at the end and they go, that character, like I know that character in real life, I know that person, and having that validation of something very specific, which again in Australia we interact with plays in a way that's very much borrowing plays from other countries, borrowing plays from other cultures, which is great, but it's nice to write something that's kind of about Sydney, that's about people we know, that's about our experience, and have then people go like, I know that fuckhead. He works, I go to work with someone like that, you know, and having that kind of experience, that's been really exciting. And so I'm hoping people feel that sense of recognition. I also hope people have that feeling of kind of feeling a bit uncomfortable and kind of going, I wanted there to be an answer and there wasn't. And what would I have done in that situation, or what decision would I have made? Because I think that's maybe how we start to tackle the issue of any kind of systemic abuse or systemic injustice is by asking more questions. How do I interact with this system? What can I do differently? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, we have been talking a lot about that. Because when Jordan, who you know,
I was listening to his episode. It was fantastic.
Yeah. Even Jordan, when he walked past, talking about how we continue to borrow stories from other places where we don't make our own, and like when you were talking, we want to make something which is like Sydney people can. Yeah. Oh, this is our home, you know, like that actually made me feel really good that you're doing that. And there is that whole systematic sort of abuse especially in the power positions. But why do you think that Australia hasn't, why are we behind than America?
That's a really good question. I think when it comes to our legal systems are really different.
Yeah.
And I haven't studied law and, have you studied law?
I studied a little bit.
Oh, yeah. So my that's so, okay. Well, no, now this is turning into a research session where I'm going to ask you questions. Well, I was going to say my understanding is, and from the research that I've done, that the way that our system works in terms of defamation is really different.
Right.
So it's a lot of people when they approach, especially if they've experienced something that involves a high profile person who's abused them, it's not as straightforward perhaps as being able to mount a case against this person, because they can come back and just slap not a restraining order, but like a defamation kind of case. And we've seen that happen with a lot of high profile sexual assault cases here, or alleged sexual assault cases here. And I think my understanding is that it's different in the States, not that they don't have defamation laws, but I think ours are really, really strict, and I understand why that's the case. I think that's obviously some people have they've thought that's seen fit to be like that, but it doesn't. What my interest is more in, how is our system making it more difficult for justice to happen, as opposed to, or rather, who is our system sort of directly or indirectly benefiting, right? If it's supposed to be for people who are survivors of sexual assault, how is it that it is actually so difficult for those people to come forward and then feel like they're the ones on trial against in a defamation case when it's actually like they're the one that has allegedly sustained what's happened to them. So that's fascinating to me. I think that's probably a big part of why it's been difficult to get that kind of completion of like, so something has happened, but we don't see the restorative justice thing happen because it gets hamstrung in this kind of big cycle, I think.
But I think like a lot of predominantly what we've seen, especially in the whole Me Too, when that started up, was in the creative space and the entertainment industry. And why is it so big in the entertainment industry?
That's such a good question.
Because I just think, I don't know, like, because people are so crazy and make like actors, and they make all these entertainment artists gods, and they put them on a pedestal.
Yeah, I think that's a really good
and then
point.
make them like these things that like we're just actors. We're not like teachers or doctors or nurses, and and like these people are the ones who are actual heroes. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
like,
that's right. I think yes, and that's a really, I think, points to a broader conversation around like how do we value different things in our current society. I think for sure, like, people who seem to have a lot of status or wealth or kind of popularity get treated like they are these kind of demigods or something in a way, and somehow beyond reproach or beyond. But I think and they're really interesting questions that I've been asking, and we've been talking a lot about in the rehearsal room, is how is it, and in our story, it's not even about an entertainment industry figurehead. I mean, and I think it's so interesting how just power operates across. Are you okay?
I think pumpkin spice cake
spice got you.
down the wrong way.
Sorry.
You've been spiced. No. But I think, it's so easy to protect the interests of people who are really powerful. Maybe not because you even like what they've done, but we just see that they have we're also dependent on them in some way to either preserve our position or our role. If you were working on a show, for example, with a high-profile person who ended up being quite abusive or quite toxic, why isn't it as simple as calling it out? Or, what are the other agendas at play that make that so difficult?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think of two things. Yeah, I think of two things when you talk about that. I think of on the one hand, the really great work Prima Facie.
Yes, which has just gone to bloody
England.
How amazing.
Performed by Jodie Comer. Absolutely incredible. That's one of my favorite.
And what an awesome success story for us to see that, like, that's an Australian work.
Yeah.
And that went over, like, yes, so cool.
Absolutely. And then the other one, thinking about Jeffrey Rush.
Yes, I know, the elephant in the room.
The elephant in the room,
totally.
yeah. But
Totally.
it's terrifying. Like, obviously I've never been in, not obviously, but I haven't been in that situation before where I've had an older actor I immensely respect, who I know has so much power and could completely ruin my career, to have them do things to me and talk to me about things that I'm not comfortable with, and then being like, well, what do I do?
Totally.
Who do I talk to? And then to have then confided into a group, and then they're the ones who are like, oh yeah, by the way, this person said this about Jeffrey Rush.
Yeah.
And then putting them in front of the whole defamation case.
Absolutely. And like, whether or not, what has actually happened there, we don't know. But I think that's so fascinating to me. And this story is very much about how other people might try and interact with. The story of Tongue Tied is really a journalist trying to break this story and was not directly influenced by any of that stuff that was going on because, as I say, wrote it kind of like months before that had happened.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to see parallels mirrored, and even with the Brittany Higgins case that's going on, you see this constant dance between the media trying to interact in a meaningful way because and what that tells me is not that, you know, the media is – why are people turning to journalism to get a sense of justice with these stories rather than going through the legal system? Why is it that that seems like a viable option or the only option for some people? Plenty of people don't actually want it to be handled as a trial by media because we see just this immensely toxic environment play out, and we see how we vilify people like Brittany Higgins or Grace Tame or who, you know, it's turns into the smear campaign of kind of gargantuan proportions that is so re-traumatizing for the person who's at the center of it. So it's finger and saying the justice system isn't doing enough, or the journalists aren't assuming that their hearts aren't in the right place. It's more about like, why is it that seems like the most viable option? You know, what's actually going on here that this is how it keeps playing out? You know,
and like. Also now with all our Instagram and social media and whatnot, I don't know, like, are people still respecting the journalism, like the journalists
that's such
out
a good
there?
question.
Like, I'm just like, it's such an influence, and we don't know what is the truth. And every time we read something, like I'm into this day, like we read some things, like man, no way, like you don't just. I just feel like people shouldn't just believe what they read. Look, if you're interested in something, look into it.
Yeah.
You know, really look into it. You know,
Yeah, the era of fake news, right?
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
And everyone was actually, when the pandemic started, whatnot, I had a massive argument, and it was basically about, you know, how the Chinese government, they had they have a centralized system where, you know, it goes, like, all the information goes to one place, you know, and where I'm like, well, it's not really different to our Western society where, like, every journalist, every company has a different political backing, you know, like as a left wing, a right wing, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
That's what we see day-to-day basis. Everyone's paid to say something, you know. So what is the truth? If you want to know the truth, you have to go and find out.
Yeah.
You have to go look into it, you know.
And taking up an active role inside of
role,
that.
yeah.
Not just consuming things passively.
Yeah. Because then you end up just like getting the wrong news, getting the wrong information. Then you start pointing fingers at people where you probably shouldn't have pointed fingers at, you know, and things get worse.
Yeah, totally. We had to have that discussion. We're doing the really fun part of working on a new work where you're sitting around the table with actors and everyone's reading through the script and asking me questions, and I'm sort of sitting there like this kind of like fly on the wall being like, I don't know. You tell me, what do you think it is? But we had that exact conversation because we're sort of making decisions around like, okay, this person is a journalist. Okay, what paper does she report to? What are the alignments of that paper? Are they owned by a sort of Murdoch-esque sort of conglomerate entity that's sort of conservative, or they sort of leaning more on the left, or they appear to be more left according to the Murdoch side, but they're actually not? Like, having all these discussions are really, really fun for me as a playwright, and kind of going like, how can we make this as respond to like what is happening here in Sydney? How can we make this feel as like relevant as possible to people looking at it?
And I think also in the creative industry, a lot of us, especially in Sydney, we immediately, all of us, fall on the far left side, and it's okay to be left, but like I'm at a point where like I like to listen to both sides, and like I'm not going to say that you're right or wrong, but everyone has a view, but in order to get to the truth, you need to understand the different sides, you know, and that's what I mean. Like, you gotta listen to people.
Yeah,
you know?
listening.
Yeah.
I think, and that, which is why I love playwriting so much. I think, and plays in particular, is that I believe it's an active decision to go and listen to personal stories, seeing characters with personal experiences, and actually fleshing out the way that the political intersects with the personal. That's just the reality of life. Is you can interact with a piece of paper that's a news article, but what's the actual human experience or the way that that played out for that person? That's why I just love plays for exploring these sorts of things, because in a way, this play is not about the end product, which is an article that's breaking a story. It's about all the moments behind the scenes. It's all the actual story that's behind the story, you know? Which I love. I love that we can do that. And as you say, kind of not force people to sit and listen to different perspectives, but just see what happens when those different perspectives bounce off each other and have to exist in this kind of space together. That's really what Tongue Tie's about.
Yeah.
You know?
Like the funny thing is that like when you talk about the political differences, like it's really like left and right. It's like the shoehorn theory, you know, the shoehorn.
No, what's the shoehorn theory?
So that's a shoehorn. That's
yes, okay, yes.
That's a shoehorn, right? So
That's convenient you have that prompt.
I just picked it up. So like that's left, that's a right. They believe the same things, but for different reasons.
Oh, I see. Okay, so they're sort of like mirrors of each other.
So they almost like come back, whereas like they believe the same sort of things, but for different reasons. You know, one.
No.
Well, there is.
No.
You don't think
Oh.
No. People on the far right want to kill black people and kill Jews. There's nobody on the far left who is like, I'm so left-leaning. Yeah, white supremacy, man.
Well, what do the communists do? The same thing. They're against other nationalities.
I think you're cherry picking.
Oh, but that's once again we're talking about they believe in the same things.
I think the problem with that generalization is that we end up with the statement both sides are equally crappy, which I really hate because it forces it gives all the people in the middle ground ammunition to be like, oh well, then I'll just not listen to the left or the right because they're both crappy. And I'm like, no,
I don't want people.
No,
I don't want people to do that though.
But that's what you were kind of implying by
I'm
saying
not.
that people on the far left are eventually going to be the same as the people on the far right.
No, they're not. But
that's your shoehorn thing.
But that's okay. There are many parts of the left. There are many parts to the right.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. And you should be, as a person, like there. As far as I'm concerned, there isn't a left or right for the truth. There's only one way to get to a truth, right? And you need to be able to listen to people and why and where that comes from. Like
I don't think you need to listen to Nazis. You don't need to listen to Nazis.
Well, you need to listen. You need to know your enemy before you attack him, right?
I suppose
you can't walk up.
You don't need to give them a platform. Sorry, this is the Breakup Podcast. Thank you.
No, what have I done?
Claire.
Sorry.
Thanks, Claire.
Do I need to step in and do some counselling? That's
You
fine.
don't need to give Nazis a platform.
No, you don't need to give them a platform. No, I agree.
You know,
I agree. I'm not saying that.
What I'm hearing from the two of you is that
we need a therapist in here, which we are getting in much.
Neil didn't give me a birthday present this year.
Oh, no.
And that's been all of this anger and hate I've been building
Hold on a
towards.
minute. Hold on a minute. I asked you to come to my engagement party. You didn't come to.
Well, but it's interesting, I think, to see it in the context of how I've tried to get into the mindset of characters that believe really diametrically opposing things, right? It's really, and I think when I was younger, probably when I even started writing this play, I would write characters that I didn't agree with politically as a person, as a writer, and it was really tempting just to make a caricature of that person that the audience could sit there and go, ha ha ha, that person is so wrong. Right? And I think from, ethically, they have done things that are objectively not great, right? But what made the work better was me being able to sit in that space of going, why, empathizing with why are they doing it, from what position are they motivated to do that, and being able to hold space for the fact that that person is a person. And I mean, I fundamentally don't believe that people are good or bad or innately, not innately bad, certainly, that really there are just circumstances by which we create certain people. Like Nazis are a product of a context that they are existing inside of. And it's really when we get angry, as we have, and we felt that anger in the room today because it's so charged, you know what I mean? And how fantastic to care so much about it. And that's valuable to be angry, but then to move through that and then ask questions meaningfully about like how are they arriving to this position? How can we listen to maybe not what they're saying on the surface, which is not worth giving a platform, but what is the system that's created this person?
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yeah, so where does that come from?
Exactly.
That's
like
what I'm saying. Where does
Yes.
that come from?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Claire said it much better than you.
Oh well, she's a writer. She's a writer. I'm just
But no, I completely agree. I I think Jordan Raskopoulos was saying that like many years ago, she was saying that talking about white privilege was really didn't ring true for a lot of people, white people who were in a lower socioeconomic climate, because they were like, "Where's my privilege?" It's like
Totally.
I'm suffering here. It's very hard for me. I'm not rich. I don't feel privileged, and understanding that reaction to kind of being called out for having white privilege, understands. I can see where you're coming from. It's not that there's wrong or right in that regard necessarily, but like, I see why you have that volatile reaction to something quite radical and left.
Yes, totally. And I think as well, maybe we have, as a society, this is going to be a huge generalization, so brace yourself, it's coming.
That's okay.
But this want for there to be a simple answer, a simple conclusion, a simple instruction around this is, okay, so we have privilege, it's X or it's Y, and I think really it's about going, okay, it's a discussion. It's an ongoing discussion. Someone can posit one thesis or one idea. Privilege is X. And then the people it concerns can have right of reply and go, actually, that's not intersectional. That doesn't respond to my experience of how that intersects with my socioeconomic status or whatever. And rather than being afraid of the disagreement that's happening, it's about going, okay, the conversation is evolving now. And the fantastic thing, I think, about what's happened in the last few years even is that conversations are evolving really quickly. Maybe because we have social media, because we can be engaged with the discourse or hear other people's lived experiences and their perspectives and have that dispersed really quickly on TikTok or on Instagram or whatever. It's for better or for worse. I mean, for worse, sometimes it means everyone putting a black square up for Black Lives Matter, and that's like, oh no, we all jumped on a trend too quickly and that was terrible, right? But on the converse, it's about going, okay, wow, we've really accelerated through so many discussions, not because it's you got it wrong by coming to the table with whatever experience you had and having an opinion. That's okay. Like, it's not about being right or wrong. I think it's just about listening to each other, being open to that as much as possible, because we're not ever going to reach an end state where we go, we fixed everything. We are now like socially progressive, or we are now like living in a utopia. We're just not. The world is not going to be like that. So if we could maybe be more prepared to be uncomfortable and come to the table, that would be great, rather than getting it right necessarily.
Discussions and debates.
Yeah, I think that's a really great note to end on.
Cool.
Yeah.
Just quick, can we just get down? You got the dates for the show?
I do. Oh, my producers are going to kill
No,
me.
it's okay.
No,
that's okay.
I know that our previews start on the 11th of November. Our opening night is the 16th of November, and I think we go until we definitely end by the end of November.
Cool.
So just think in your mind, dear listener, November. November is the time.
November, KXT,
November,
tongue-tied.
KXT.
Either way, I'll put it all up on the thing, on the
Please,
Instagram.
thank you so much. And will you come?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Love to see both of you there.
We've been going to so many, he's been going to many players, and so we're just trying to support as much.
I want to hear your thoughts
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
about Sydney and what we've talked about.
Just quickly, before we end, quick question. If you had a chance to sit down with dinner with anyone in history, who would it be?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That's so. Oh no! Quickly. Okay, I have to be quick. My person is still alive.
Okay.
I and my friends will laugh at me for saying this.
We can't set up by what, mind you.
You can't set it up?
No,
well,
no,
she's
no.
alive.
Okay, we'll try.
Okay, well, I'm going to manifest it then.
Okay.
I'm going to throw it onto the universe. I love Jane Fonda so much. And I would
Cool.
love to go to dinner with Jane Fonda, talk about like activist, creative, just an amazing woman all around. Would love to meet her.
Amazing.
Have dinner.
Jane Fonda.
Oh my God. Fun.
That's great. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Beth. This was really fun.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so
Claire.
much.
And thanks everybody for listening. We'll
you.
see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
And can
Bye.
I confirm you haven't broken up?
No,
we're
no,
fine.
Yeah, okay,
no. Takes more than that. All right, thanks so
All right.
much. See you next one.
Bye everyone.
Bye.